Hello, friends. I told you that part 2 wouldn't be too long. Well, it wouldn't be a long time. The video is enormous. And yeah, there are quite a few tangents here, including one rather long one. I hope it's interesting regardless. And yeah, just a quick reminder. Summer Patron Drive, here are the milestones. Head on over and sign up. Some of these are really fun. And yeah, we need the help too. Oh, and as I keep getting asked to warn people about topics like this, okay, so this part of Higurashi deals with some pretty nasty stuff, including the mistreatment, neglect, and worse of children. I will be approaching it with as much tact as I can and naturally omitting the more severe panels because, well, YouTube. So please consider yourselves warned. There is stuff in here that is no fun, and believe you me, the Answers arc is even meaner. That said, this is where the arc starts picking up speed, and the way this one ends, holy shit, yo, it is something else. One last thing. On rereading this, I didn't realize how many hints and clues there were here, or how much Tatarigoroshi ties Onikakushi and Watanagashi together, before we get to the intermission arc, and then we start the answer arcs. Boy, those are going to be like 5 hours a piece, folks. It's really cool and pretty damn interesting, so big eyes and big ears here, folks. This is where you might want to start taking notes. Anyways, let's get back to it. We get back to the action fairly fast, as Oishi asks Keiichi to bring him Satako. He needs to talk to her about something really important. And yeah, okay, two things that, well, it's as good of a chance as any to talk about them. So firstly, Higurashi and also Umineko volumes do not behave in the way that you would probably expect them to. See, volumes do not follow your standard structure, in that volumes can range from standard volume length, svelte, 160-page or so all-told affairs, to titanic 400-plus page monstrosities. It is kinda cool, but it does make going volume by volume kind of impossible. Secondly, take a note at the last panel on the left. Put a pin in it and remember it along with what happens here. It is so clever and so subtle that I only just noticed it, but yeah, Ryukishi, mate. Let's hope the Patron Drive does get up to the breakpoint needed for that Silent Hill F video, because this man can write. Anyway, Keiichi, immediately suspicious and not really wanting this creepy dude here, asks Oishi what the hell he's doing, showing up at a school and demanding to speak with a minor child. Who are you, Dr. Irie? That's it. Note how this all proceeds, and note these similarities to Onikakushi. I'll be saying the latter rather a lot. I promise you, this is gonna blow your mind later, as yes, this is intentional. Let's just say there is a lot of overlap between the arcs, and you will see just how much later. I generally don't, as a rule, like time travel or time loop stories, but this one does it so adeptly that it's objectively one of the best manga ever written. Fight me. As you youngsters would say, Higurashi slaps, as Oishi becomes more threatening and gradually begins to break all kinds of boundaries here. Irie does show up and kind of saves Keiichi. Dude, what are you doing here? Now, this has been translated naturally and is more in line with how Western policing works. In reality, Japan does not have any right to silence, and cops can, if they really want to, go just about anywhere and search just about anything, or essentially just imprison you indefinitely until you confess to whatever they want you to, without a trial, and you've got no absolute right to counsel either. I am not even slightly kidding. We may discuss this later in Higurashi, but it may honestly just wait until we do something else. Probably I Am a Hero, it's a whole thing. Regardless, Oishi withdraws, leaving Keiichi shaken. We learn that Oishi is kind of notorious in Hinamizawa, both because of him being kind of a volatile asshole, and also being someone who is constantly poking his nose into matters that do not concern him. I have no idea why he hasn't been Sonozaki'd. Maybe because he's a cop, I don't know. As the two talk, we get a confirmation of a bit of what happened to Satako and why Oishi might want to speak with her. See, firstly, her parents died/vanished in a manner very much looking like the so-called curse of Oyashiro, and after this, they were sent to live with their aunt and their uncle, who were, okay, we will be exploring this extensively in the corresponding answers arc, but short version, extremely abusive and cruel people. But because Japan, well, we're gonna get there. Short version, family law trumps nearly anything the cops could do back then, unless there was an extreme public outcry and other pretty complicated and tough conditions met for the police to even slightly intervene in a situation like this. Even when the abuse is kind of common knowledge, Japan is, say it with me folks, kind of its own thing. But yeah, these two are truly hideous human beings, and the situation may well have gotten even worse, with the pair of siblings miserable, neglected, mistreated, and harried by a pair of caregivers that were very, very good at towing the line between merely being horrible and doing something that would have finally brought them up on charges. However, before it got to that point, someone beat the aunt to death. Initially, this was believed to be yet another inexplicable curse murder, as they were at least related to traitors, but it turned out to be someone whacked out of their gourd on amphetamines. Yeah, tweakers are a thing in Japan. And okay, little tangent. Keep in mind that while a cap of Sudafed, or even being in the same club where someone got nicked with a joint, can get you locked up for a month, fined, and then deported, not even kidding, a mate of mine went home this way, you could, until not too long ago, buy amphetamine equivalents like Bron over the counter there. A spoonful or a few pills are enough to keep you working a 12-hour workday despite rollicking pneumonia and a broken femur. Take a little bit more and, well, let's just say you'll be having fun, but everyone within a 10-meter radius of you probably isn't. Now, abuse of these substances used to be a massive problem, albeit one not often talked about. But some of these products are now prescription only, and others have removed the more, let's say, troublesome ingredients. But the original formulations are still easily available, especially out in the country. And if you know where to look, there are at least 2 or 3 people in your small town that have their own little Gregory House stockpile. So yeah, this happening in the country is kind of plausible. But this is where things get kind of interesting. Despite this, and quite a lot of other curse deaths and vanishings being ostensibly solved, Satoshi being sighted in Nagoya and chalked up as a runaway, Inaka man killing the aunt, Inaka man, really? The parents falling to their deaths in a misadventure, well, Oishi doesn't buy any of this and insists on investigating, even when this comes over as harassment. This has resulted in himself being viewed as a harbinger of bad shit too, as anyone he approaches seems to suffer from bad luck, and thus to the villagers, he's sometimes referred to as Oyashiro-sama's messenger. Yep, that probably sounds a lot spookier in Japanese. Essentially, Oishi visited many of the victims, Satoshi, the Furudes, the Hojos, etc., right before they died or vanished. Now, I can probably guess what you're thinking, especially those of you who are murder mystery minded or, are a fan of B-tier Stephen King novels. But are you right? Well, probably partially. Keep in mind that Ryukishi is a huge murder mystery fan, especially classics like the Agatha Christie novels. So, I guess we'll have to see. Three days pass with no sign of Satako at school. An increasingly concerned and despondent Keiichi, who looks, yeah, you might have spotted it yourself, a bit like he was looking at this point in the story in Onikakushi, says that he has no idea what happened to her. However, his head is likely full of curses, Oishi, the shit with the aunt and the uncle, and of course Satoshi running away. What exactly is going on here? However, as he stares out of a classroom window, he suddenly sees Satako walking to school, naturally rushing over to her to ask where the hell she's been and what happened, to which a startled but seemingly chipper Satako says that she was cleaning her house? What? The two go back and forth a little. She seems kind of fine and cheerful, but still weirdly evasive. Worse yet, Keiichi senses something else here. Something brittle and insincere. Yeah, if your spidey sense is tingling, or your Peter Tinkle is spidering, I don't know. You can probably guess what's up, and yeah, it's not good. The friends talk about it later, commenting that this Satako is really off. She's not being silly, she's not pulling pranks or scolding people. She's saccharine sweet and almost aggressively peppy and bubbly. Not her normal self. She seems almost terrified to bother or offend anyone for any reason. Oh dear. Either Philip Tyre is mentoring her, crikey Moses, nobody's gonna get that, or something is going really wrong in her life. While everyone seems confused and worried, Mion looks kind of guilty, like she knows more than she's saying. Keiichi asks her straight up, and for once the Yakuza heiress is not evasive. She comes right out and says it. Satoko's uncle, remember after her parents died of the curse, the guy that was implied to be really bad news? Well, he's back. He's taken custody of her and, oh dear, remembering how awfully he and his aunt treated her before, this does not bode well. Especially by the sounds of it, he debuted by forcing her to clean his house from top to bottom instead of her attending school. As we'll explain in a bit, this is very plausible, but also weirdly rolled dahl. Worse yet, it appears that the uncle is back in his life because his bird, who, okay, remember the corpse in the culvert that got Sonozaki'd? That's the mistress. He thinks that she left him. I don't know if he knows that she's dead or not. And so he's back with a huge chip on his shoulder and just looking to be a dick. And without Satoshi, who used to kind of tank for her, this is gonna get ugly. Sure enough, Satako has to go right home after school. No club. And while she tries to put a brave face on it, she's clearly really suffering. And okay, here we go with the big problem raised here and what I mentioned previously in terms of a tangent and how difficult this sort of thing is for anyone to do anything about, especially with the... Alright, so there is an additional wrinkle here that will be explored extensively in the Answers arc, but in a nutshell, this one is going to be tricky to untangle. So what we are going to do is put a small pin in this for now, move ahead slightly, and then we will cut back to the relevant and likely enormous tangent, which I think you will need to understand what happens here and in the Answers arc. The kids discuss the matter. If the uncle is abusing Satako like the old days, they can't just go to the police. Mion says that this would be futile. They have no proof, and worse yet, according to Mion, this could all make it so much worse. See, she actually tried before. The child welfare officer, Pin, as I said, came and investigated after they reported them, but as the kids didn't appear to be seriously injured, they were given food after a fashion and had some place to sleep. Well, they couldn't do anything. Remember, corporal punishment from a caregiver in Japan in that era was completely illegal, even fairly severe corporal punishment. And whatever was going on would have likely been framed in this manner. This, however, only encouraged them, and they stepped up the abuse to the point of Satako being near, let's say doing something drastic. which, if I recall, is later revealed to be kind of their goal. These people are pure evil, by the way, but the discussion turns pretty complicated, and while yes, we are going to talk about some of this, about how the Lord treats matters like this over there, we are not going to be going into it with this level of granularity. Short version, there is sweet Fanny Adams anyone can do, and eventually Keiichi snaps and just starts yelling, accusing Mion of not caring about Satako. Yeah, look at this and think back to Onikakushi. It's actually a huge clue. But after the girls say that, well, A, Satako is not a pet, and B, she can't just come and live with them because their families wouldn't allow it, they ask him, who has quite a lot of autonomy, why she doesn't go and live with him. That's actually an amazing question, Keiichi. I don't know if we ever get an answer, but everyone starts getting upset with each other, and it very nearly turns into a big fight. Now, that wrinkle I mentioned, it is not going to be a huge deal here, but knowing it is going to be helpful, and it is going to be absolutely crucial once we get to the answers arc. And I think it's what Mion and Rena were alluding to. So, I am just going to go ahead and spoil it here. Part of the problem is that the Hojos are persona non grata due to their parents being willing to accept money to support the dam and the destruction of Hinamizawa. And this grudge was passed on to their children. There's a fair bit more, but regardless, the kids do wind up apologizing to each other. And as the cicadas cry outside, they leave for home bitterly unhappy. But yeah, as mentioned, it's tangent time. And I am going to give you fair warning. This is a long one. Alright, so this is going to be one hell of a complicated and nuanced topic of discussion that I am going to be nutshelling extensively here, otherwise this video will wind up being 7 hours long. So, I apologize for any mistakes or oversimplifications here, and also any lapses, because this is an area of the culture where my knowledge is somewhat limited. But the reality of all of this is that Satako's situation is unfortunately not uncommon. And it's a very difficult and complicated problem to pick apart. So, as with a lot of weird Japanese things, to understand this, we need to go back to the feudal era, particularly later, and at its tail end, the Meiji period. Before this, Japan didn't have much in the way of a universal legal code. Outside of, okay, here's this list of rules, but whatever the nobles say go, and if they don't like how one of these rules applies in the moment, they can just ignore it or change it. Yeah, sucks to be you. Why were you born a peasant? We actually talked about this in the most recent Fuan no Tane video, if you recall, and if you don't, go check it out. It's kind of a good video. Meiji, however, along with a lot of modernizations, brought a need for reforms and a movement towards standardized, universally applicable and codified laws. Ones that would endure through any regime change. And yeah, this is where things got really bloody interesting. See, while Japanese law during this period to some degree mimicked legal systems in Europe, there was a lot of concern. See, family and breeding has always mattered a great deal to the Japanese mind, especially as it was permanently codified as a caste system by the various codes, but especially under frigging Tokugawa, meaning that who you were born to decided almost absolutely what your life trajectory would look like. Think the Bajorans in that one really great episode of DS9. This meant that a lot of families, samurai, yeah, but especially the nobles and those who had some prestige, predated any sort of universal legal system by hundreds of years, hell, probably thousands in some cases, and were thus far more respected than the new government. Their attitude was basically, yeah, you do your laws, we're just gonna keep on doing our own thing. at least partially because of this, laws did not apply so much to individuals as to families, with the ie, or household, being your basic legal entity. Larger families often live together in these kinds of closed compounds, nobody being allowed to enter, including the police. And in reality, if you belong to the right family, you were still basically immune to prosecution. Now, this meant that intra-family problems, such as domestic violence or child abuse, weren't really crimes exactly. They were bad, sure, but the family would be expected to handle such things internally, and if they wouldn't or they couldn't, well, nothing could be done. A father's authority over his children and his wife were absolute, with likely only the family patriarch, generally the grandfather, able to intercede. This remained until after World War II, where Japan did get a proper constitution and laws were changed to be even more focused on the individual, but very little actually changed in practice. Family law, even though it no longer technically trumped actual law, still kind of reigned supreme and continued to do so. This meant that, even in constitutional Japan, that in practice, if a child was being mistreated, not much could or would be done because the caregivers, particularly the male caregiver, still had nearly unlimited authority, even if this authority was simply cultural rather than legal. This also, by the way, applied to the child's teacher in a lot of cases. This remained the case until basically the 2000s, with stricter and more codified anti-abuse measures, particularly the imaginatively named Child Abuse Prevention Act in the year 2000. Well, this instituted some actual systems to care for children aside from their family. This included the Child Welfare Officer, remember? Becoming a thing. These people are, think Japanese CPS, but it was a miserable job, with minimal funding, abysmal pay, far too much work, and massive obstructionism from families and parents without any real support from the authorities. Sadly, it's not that much better today. Although corporal punishment was banned outright in 2020, which is probably a step in the right direction. But to this day, the overworked, underpaid, and often derided welfare officers really don't have much in the way of power or even training, resulting in them frequently saying things like, well, there are no visible injuries so the kid is fine, or yeah, there was some abuse maybe, but we spoke to the parents, they said they were sorry and that they wouldn't do it anymore. I wish I was kidding. I actually knew a lady that worked as a CWO, and while she was one of the good ones, she also started in on the cheap scotch at about 9 AM, and I do not blame her. Part of the problem is that while kids can, in emergencies, be removed from their parents, foster parents aren't really a thing. There are temporary and permanent facilities, oh boy, we will get to those. But aside from this, parental authority is still nigh on untouchable, meaning that even if the children have been removed from their custody, the primary parent can still call the shots. Now, this is bad enough for your standard parent-child relationship, but as far as orphans go, alright, so this tangent is already too long. So we're just going to gloss over it and go into more detail once we get to the answers arc, which, spoiler, really explores the dysfunctional dynamic that these siblings faced. But orphans in Japan have always been, and unfortunately still are, kind of treated like crap. In the case of a parental death, the extended family can and generally will be required by law to take these children in and raise them. Yeah. Remember, naturally, in the country where a lot of people struggle financially, and many to this day live somewhere between welfare and subsistence farming, additional mouths to feed, and all of the expenses children bring are not welcome. And while they are typically given some sort of stipend by the government, it's really not much and doesn't even begin to cover everything. This means that orphans are viewed as a burden, with extreme emotional abuse and neglect being horribly common, even where physical abuse is not present in these sorts of forced caregiver situations. This is actually an extremely common trope in anime and manga, if you think about it and how many times you've probably seen it. Gantz, for one, explores similar issues. Remember all of this misery porn? But what about if there aren't any family members? Or they just vanish? Or they outright refuse to take in the kids? Aren't there orphanages? Well, we will talk more about this in the final arc. Yep, those of you who've read this just winced, because that's the darkest part of this manga, and also one of the few sequences that had to be censored in the anime release. For now, let me just say, imagine the most horrifying Dickensian workhouse and multiply that by 50. Oh, it's some evil shit, folks. So yeah, that's an extremely shortened and truncated explanation of the hugely complicated and nuanced issue. But if this entire thing involving Satako, Satoshi, and her adoptive caregivers seems far-fetched, it's actually horribly, horribly believable. Anyways. Sometime later, the situation sours further. In a brief meeting with Irie, whose first name is Kantoku, oh man, so I don't usually tackle names unless they are very on the nose, and this one is. Depending on what kanji are used, it could mean boss, like in a professional sense, director or supervisor maybe, or it could mean incredibly good-hearted and virtuous. Japanese names, man. Anyway, they run into him giving Satako a lift home, and yeah, I'm not gonna make the obvious Amber Alert joke. This is already way too dark. But she seems even more fragile and wan. And it turns out that, yeah, okay, I am going to go over this briefly. Sorry for all the tangents, folks. But this is really interesting, and it's one of those things that seems so absolutely bizarre to foreigners. Short version, Satako is burdened by enormous bags of booze and cigarettes, as well as an array of Japanese drinking snacks. Don't get me started on surume, bleh. But how in the name of Oyashiro did a grade schooler buy university dormitory levels of substances? Well, you can buy booze and cigs super easily in Japan. Most supermarkets and convenience stores carry both in open display on shelves. Now, during this era, it was a whole thing, as kids could, and at times did, buy these products. And yes, it was every iota as problematic as you can imagine. In the early days of when I was over there, maybe 2 high schoolers in 3 were smoking. There was let's say a gentle crackdown, where the stores and the shopkeepers could find themselves in really hot water for selling to a minor, but yeah, it still ran broadly on the honor system, and thus was known to happen. But the problem wasn't the shops. The problem was the vending machines. Yeah, you could and still can buy beer, hard coolers, and smokes from vending machines pretty easily. And while you can stop Lawsons from flogging whiskey to the grade schoolers, you can't prosecute a vending machine. And yeah, this was a huge problem. Think drunk middle schoolers on the train, resulting in a bit of an outcry, and the TASPO, a sort of mangling of tobacco passport system, was instituted, where you would need to get a specific card and a number, which you would scan at these vending machines, but it never really caught on outside of the cities. A lot of older machines to this day still lack TASPO verification, and beyond this, getting one is a huge pain in the poo pipe. Oh, and for some reason, you couldn't get one at all as a foreigner, although a mate of mine did actually get one, and I still have no idea how. Yeah, TASPO was a huge fart, and this problem wouldn't be solved until, frankly, COVID, due to the intense use of automated self-checkout systems, which naturally meant that a kid could just grab a bottle of hooch and beep it through. Which took us right back to the old days. There was another big outcry, and the eventual solution was to require people to scan their driver's license when checking out. A dismal failure, because a lot of people in Japan don't drive. So, they finally came up with the wonderfully named My Number cards, which are much easier to obtain and are now used for basically everything that requires ID verification. So yeah, this was an era where Satako could have plausibly obtained cigarettes and booze in large amounts, with Japan being the land of, whoops, nope, I didn't see that. Yeah, that's probably what happened. Anyways, as she exits the car, her uncle appears and begins screaming at her about some minor domestic error and, yeah, meet Teppei Hojo. This guy. Oh boy, this guy. You know, there are manga villains that are complex, nuanced characters who, despite being evil, are made compelling with a sympathetic backstory and deep writing. Your Griffiths, your Nagators, you know. Then you get the natural disaster types, like Frieza and Dio. Evil as hell, but in an entertainingly chaotic and bombastic way. Then you get the third kind, the truly irredeemable, no fun at all monsters, who do utterly horrible shit for petty, selfish, and at times seemingly no reason at all outside of simple spite and evil. We're talking the Shotuckers, the Overhauls, the Yamoris, and this loathsome piece of shit is right up there, and in fact may be tied with Shira from Blade of the Immortal as the most morally reprehensible character I have encountered in literature in quite some time. Oh boy, do I hate Teppei, and by the end of this manga, so will you, I promise. Holy frigging crap, this guy. While yes, Higurashi has its share of terrifyingly evil people, as you will see later, I will still maintain that in terms of the named characters, Teppei may be the worst. Anyway, it turns out that he and his sleazy buddies are gambling, playing mahjong, and just boozing it up, essentially using Satako as their mate. Worse yet, oh no, Keiichi notices that Satako is covered with scrapes and bruises, and while she deflects this as her just being clumsy and falling down the stairs, fuck man, this sort of stuff is not fun. And yeah, Keiichi immediately knows that she is at least being beaten and prepares to go absolutely Billy Berserker. Irie, however, stops him, likely knowing that if he were to go after Teppei, not only would it do nothing, it could actually get him in hot water and definitely make things worse for Satako. Then, this scene, man, to make matters more heartbreaking, Satako, now appearing utterly resigned to her fate, thanks Keiichi, saying that he reminded her of her brother just then and prepares to go inside. Keiichi yells that this isn't over and he's not going anywhere, but Satako, smiling that same awful smile, only with tears running down her cheeks, thanks him again, but emphatically in the past tense, and heads inside, while Irie escorts him away. As he goes, he sees a wan, battered, and crying Satako, smiling miserably at him from the doorway, waving farewell. Damn it, Ryukishi, just damn it.
Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby to get ourselves a treat.
Hello all, this is Mrs. Owl, aka the Other Owl, aka the random snarky text interjections in Mr. Owl's videos. I just wanted to let everyone know that I'm offering a variety of my services at a very affordable price.
Phrasing?
Yeah, okay. But you know what I mean. And he better not have inserted that Archer clip over that.
Womp womp.
So for starters, my art commissions are still open. I can do everything from pixel art to animations to actual art. And if you want some examples of what I can do, I designed Mr. Owl's avatar, his intro, and all of his good thumbnails. Shh, don't tell him I said that. But if you want some fan art, an OC, an avatar, video thumbnails, an animation, or maybe a portrait or something for that important someone, whatever you want made, I'm sure we can figure something out. Now, to those of you aspiring authors, and there seem to be a good few of you on the Discord right now, I also have extensive experience proofreading and editing at a professional level, and I even design book covers. So whether it's a short story, a manga, a comic, or even academic essays or dissertations, I'm here to fix it up, polish it, and make sure it all works. And for those of you who've finished a book or graphic novel and are looking to get it read, we're offering a very special, all-inclusive editing and book cover package, and just to sweeten the deal, this will include a proper ad spot in one of Mr. Owl's videos. If you're interested, I'd snap that one up as soon as possible. So that's my side of things. If you're interested or want a quote or further information, hit me up at my business email or coffee, all links in the description. Much appreciated, and now we return to our regularly scheduled owl.
As the two drive, we learn a bit more about Satoshi. Irie appears to actually have some knowledge of the situation, beyond the rumors and the inferences made by the general townsfolk. Yes, Satoshi withdrew all of his savings. He'd been working a part-time job. Yeah, it's a thing even for kids. But we've done enough tangents for a bit. He was doing this in order to raise some funds to buy his sister something nice for her birthday, as he knew her caregivers wouldn't. To Irie's reckoning, something then happened. Something that caused him to snap and just bolt. Probably something to do with Teppei. And worst of all, he left on her birthday. Bloody hell. While everyone else basically knows that he will never return, Satako holds out hope and has committed to being independent and not a burden to him, likely believing that her weakness and emotional collapse in the face of the abuse was one of the reasons he ran away. Crap, man. Yeah, the Satako stuff, this is emotionally aggressive, especially to a girl dad. We get another problem in that regard. Keiichi asks what it would take to get her away from them, and Irie says that it is almost impossible. Satako would need to come forward and accuse Teppei of abuse, which isn't likely, and spoiler, as with everything else, there is a lot more going on behind the scenes that makes this even worse. Now, Irie thinks that this is because she wants to be strong and mature, and views this all as a test that's dumb. And there's another theory that she's scared of being forced to leave Hinamizawa and being sent to an orphanage, not an unreasonable fear. As mentioned, these are horrific in Japan, and also because if she left and Satoshi did return, then what? But, okay, honestly, this is all kind of dumb as far as red herrings go, so I am going to give you a mild spoiler and say that it's none of the above. Teppei actually has something over her, and it is some evil, evil shit. The two go back and forth, but nothing comes of it, and Irie eventually drops him off at home. That night, Keiichi cannot sleep. He tosses and turns, in genuine distress over his friend's plight. What can they do? They could report Teppei, but Satako won't testify due to whatever hold Teppei has over her. With the village's hatred of Satako due to her parents, there's no help to be found there either. So, what else can you do in a situation like this? Well, if your brain works the way my brain works, well, firstly, sorry, you almost certainly do not deserve that, and secondly, you can probably think of a possible way. A dark, desperate, and dangerous way. The next day, a wan and purely slept Keiichi runs into Tomitake. yeah, the timeline on this one can be a little hard to follow sometimes. It differs a bit from the other arcs, as we haven't even reached the festival yet, so he is still alive. Ditto Takano. Keiichi is irritable and off. And again, note the resemblance between his state and how he looked in Onikakushi. If you're thinking along a certain line, you're probably not wrong. Sure enough, Takano shows up and lady, I know you're a cartoon, but listen, if it wasn't for Mrs. Owl, I would be looking at a way to turn you into, let's say, a virtual companion and leave it at that. Holy crap! They get to talking about the approaching festival and the curse again, and Keiichi, likely in utter exhaustion, says something interesting. He asks Takano about the curse and wonders if Teppei, who is someone that ran away from the village after a fashion, remember, after the aunt was beaten to death? Well, wouldn't Oyashiro be after him? Could it be possible that the vengeful Shinto deity would solve everyone's problem? She chuckles and says that yeah, there is a strong possibility. Oh, Keiichi, what are you thinking about doing, little buddy? Now, there's this whole thing, if you recall, about Takano being a sort of hobbyist in terms of investigating the curse, frankly to the point of obsession. Remember the Saiguden? This is likely what's getting her killed off every arc. And she also says something very interesting. She asks Keiichi if he knows who Santa Claus really is. And when he asks her who, she says that it's obviously his dad, i.e., there is no vengeful god. It's the village itself, punishing people who are a problem and attributing it to the curse. Lady, be very careful here. This is how you become an accessory. That was not a smart thing to say at all. He asks her who she thinks the killers are if this were true, and she, not exactly nicely, makes him swear 3 things to her before agreeing. They're simple. Number 1, he doesn't get to be upset with her. Her suspicions are what they are. Number 2, he does not tell anyone else. And number 3, he does not tell anyone that she is the one that told him, likely so nobody else gets dead. Anyway, we cut over to Oishi and So I made a dumb mistake in my previous video. The manga actually flat out tells you who the corpse was. I totally forgot this existed. It was Teppei's ex-bird Rena, who worked at a cabaret club in Shishibone proper, which, oh look, it was run by the frigging Sonozakis. Now, this actually gets interesting, but also worrying, as it turns out that she and Teppei were running an extortion and narcotics scheme. So, dabbling in casual gangsterism, which A, designates Teppei as not just a child abuser, but also someone who is legitimately dangerous, and B, probably resulted in the Sonozakis killing her, either to make an example of her, or to try and get the name of her boss. Which might be why— wait, wouldn't you run like hell away from the region? Not move right back onto the frigging Sonozakis' doorstep? Yeah, I don't actually understand this. At school, the kids do form a plan together. They're gonna bring their teacher into it. Now, keep in mind that in Japan, your homeroom teacher has nearly as much authority as your parents do and are able to, among other things, approve medical treatments. So her getting involved, and if she made a complaint, that would be a big deal. However, for various reasons, we'll get to them in just a bit, the Child Welfare Office is not exactly helpful. They say that they'll keep an eye on it, and that's about it. And this results in another outburst from an increasingly irate and haggard-looking Keiichi. Yeah, that's a young man who is reaching the end of his tether, and this is all going to end in tears. Later, Keiichi meets and speaks with Mion, and we get a very surreal sequence. Well written, but it's just odd. He asks to speak to her, not as a friend, but as the, let's say, Yakuza princess, which isn't far from the truth. and straight up tries to get these Sonozakis to kill Teppei. Whoa, dude. But he hasn't thought this out. See, Mion is a good person, albeit one with a pretty ruthless edge to her. And this is something that she has almost certainly considered. But then Mion says something subtle, but oh my goodness me, this is important. I only realized how significant this was on this read-through. So, pay attention and cast your mind back to Watanagashi, as we're actually about to recontextualize a lot of what we learned there. See, Higurashi is constantly going to be giving us answers, but then pulling the rug out from under us and saying that no, those answers were not actually correct. This is a great example. See, Mion tells him that no, while the Sonozakis do, in fact, control Hinamizawa, at least to some extent, and while they certainly do not deny it, as it adds to their power and their mystique, they are not, in fact, the ones killing people due to the curse. They are happy to take credit, as it helps them when necessary to rule through fear, and they defos do take someone out occasionally when it's required, but whatever is happening in Hinamizawa, these curse murders and these curse vanishings, it's not just the Sonozakis. Someone or something else is killing people. And I'm going to go on and spoil this and confirm this. The Yakuza did it is not the solution to Higurashi. But yeah, okay, so Mion, hear me out. Whatever is happening does not come down to you guys. Sure, okay. But you couldn't just do Keiichi and Satako as solid here? Just have Teppei bumped off? I mean, you killed his bird in a pretty gruesome fashion, likely because she was intruding on your territory. This guy was her boss. You can't make room for this loathsome piece of crap in a culvert somewhere. You don't have any spare nails. Yes, I know it's one of those narrative necessities, but it's also a plot hole, albeit a really small one. After she refuses, they part as friends, albeit awkwardly, and an increasingly desperate Keiichi is left to pin his hopes on the child welfare officer, maybe finally finding some reason to act here. And if that doesn't work, then what? Then what indeed? The next day, Satako comes to school, and to everyone's surprise, the child welfare officer did in fact show up and do a cursory investigation. But Satako tells her friends that she told him she was okay, and a now very worried-looking Rika says that this is true. Oh dear. Remember, without going into details, Teppei is manipulating his niece via a truly diabolical piece of nastiness that will be revealed way later. Worse yet, Rika says something truly terrifying. The aunt and the uncle were investigated multiple times, and nothing has ever happened. Meaning that, yeah, this is not going to be taken especially seriously. Oh shit. And trust me, this gets worse. Yeah, the plot thickens further when they learn from their homeroom teacher that part of this is a little complicated. And okay, so there is this whole thing about Satako's mother and father having separated previously. Satako's mother, let's say, played the field, and finally remarried to a man that Satako refused to accept, resulting in her going Billy berserk, becoming an absolute little hooligan, getting into trouble and breaking things. And if this sounds familiar, yup, something to file away in the clue folder. But the pertinent info is that, oh bloody hell, to try and get her stepfather removed. This all culminated in Satako filing a false accusation of abuse against her stepfather. So yeah, it appears that she is, at this point, kind of screwed. And what follows here is, okay, I am just gonna come out with it. The Answers arcs contain rather a lot of content that I refer to as squick, but I think in modern circles it may be called fuck shit. Just truly awful, heinous stuff. There are only maybe 3 or 4 sequences that really mess me up, but they are bad. The question arcs? Well, there is only one sequence that messes with me, and it is the sequence we're about to go into. And while it's not graphic, or even especially grisly. This is one of those that to this day has persisted in staying with me. If you know anything about child psychology and what this is going to imply, let's just say I struggle. On one hand, Ryukishi, you did your homework here worryingly well. On the other hand, holy shit, dude. It all starts out fairly innocuously. The kids are eating lunch together, kind of comparing what they've brought, trading, dicking around, and occasionally punking each other, including Satako nicking Keiichi's karaage, Japanese fried chicken. I've never been a fan. I've always found karaage kind of bland. No, Japan, salt is not a flavor. She actually seems back to her old self, and Keiichi, relieved, resolves to follow the advice of their homeroom teacher and just hold off. A wound doesn't heal if you keep poking it. The welfare officer does seem to be genuine and is going to be keeping an eye on things, and maybe Teppei realized that after he got reported, things have gone too far and will ease up. In a moment of spontaneous affection, Keiichi reaches out to ruffle her hair, but rather than laughing, Satako lurches away and then begins freaking the hell out, pulling at her hair, screaming, then violently shoving him away and projectile vomiting, all because a boy touched her hair. Oh hell. Eventually, she appears to come back to her senses and wraps herself in the curtains, screaming and crying, apologizing, and begging for help. Everyone begins to argue as Rena cradles the hysterical Satako, begging for her to forgive them for not being able to do anything. Mion finally bursts into tears herself, admitting that they are powerless here, and seeing the most capable and strong member of their group just give up like this, Keiichi snaps. That word, powerless. Are they powerless? Is there really nothing they can do to help her? He doesn't say anything, but Keiichi realizes that he knows what he must do to save Satako, but it's something that is going to come at a terrible cost. He starts making plans, running everything he knows over and over in his mind, and finally comes to a conclusion. A decision has been made, and it's time for this bastard to die. And yeah, holy crap, this sequence, it is so wonderfully presented. Yeah, I know, the art in this arc isn't quite as good as the art in some others, but it's still pretty good in places, and this is just cool. Have I mentioned that I love this arc? Sometime later, as the festival preparations begin, Keiichi has become increasingly surly and withdrawn, once again in a way very similar to his trajectory in Onikakushi. He's irritable, he's snapping at his friends, and endlessly ruminating on stuff. In this case, his increasingly real plans to murder Teppei and make it look like the curse. Back at home, we actually get a really fun little look behind the curtain at Ryukishi's inspirations and his own personal love of murder mystery stories, as Keiichi tries to understand what would make a perfect murder by talking to his mum, a lover of the murder mystery genre too. And they wind up directly referencing Agatha Christie's incredibly iconic And Then There Were None, the only title it has ever been known by, I promise, don't Google it, which will basically be the primary influence of Umineko, which we'll get to at, I said 500,000, right? Why do I do these things? Please don't subscribe to this channel. Covering that manga legit scares me. There's a reason why a lot of people have at least started a Higurashi deep dive, but I don't think I've seen many on Umineko. They also reference Murder on the Orient Express, which, if you've read it, haha, oh boy, are you going to be grinning like a mad bastard soon. Although, spoiler, for the longest time, I thought there was more of a Needful Things type issue happening here. Am I right? Are you right? Are neither of us right? I'm not gonna tell. One fun thing though, and again, something that'll be explored extensively, see ad nauseum, in Umineko, is the idea that a perfect crime, one that nobody can solve, is not something that would make a good mystery story. But she does basically say that, to her reckoning, the perfect murder would be one that nobody ever realized happened. That is some good but very dangerous advice. Musing this, Keiichi roams the school after classes and finds, oh right, lots of callbacks here. That's Satoshi's locker, and inside, there it is, the bat. This next bit, okay, I'm a little unclear on the geography at play here and Keiichi's initial plan. Spoiler, it changes, but I think this is the abandoned construction site near the local swamp, a place nobody will come to, as it is not just dangerous, but kind of cursed. Here, the body can simply be disposed of, sunk in the swamp forever. His plan is, assumedly, to lure Teppei out here somehow, murder him with the bat, dispose of weapon and corpse in the swamp, and then go home, with everyone assuming that either Teppei got vanished as part of the curse for being a giant prolapsed ring piece, or simply left Hinamizawa under his own power, maybe fleeing the Sonozakis. Ironically, much in the way that people think Satoshi vanished. And another bit that, okay, so I think I know what's happening here, but pay attention. If it's true, it indicates an interesting bit of overlap between Watanagashi/Meiakushi and Tatarigoroshi. Keep it in mind, please, in case I forget to bring it up way later, because again, I've literally only spotted this on this read-through and it's, man, it is so awesome if it's doing what I think it's doing. Keiichi calls Mion and asks her to look after Satako, taking her to the festival at night, as he will not be able to come, which prompts her to begin crying, then absolutely sobbing. Then she appears to be talking to someone that isn't him, saying that the last time she was asked to do this, it was by Satoshi of all people, shortly before he ran away. Now bordering on hysterical, she admits that it's a duty she's failed at and is utterly remorseful over. What the hell is going on? Believe it or not, while this looks like a departure from sanity now, it is going to make perfect sense later. Keep it in mind for Meiakushi. It's so good and it's so interesting to include this here. It implies a level of crossover between loops that genuinely fascinates me. That said, Keiichi twigs onto something massive. Everyone keeps telling him how much he reminds them of Satoshi. But what if they're more right than they know? What if, in an attempt to protect his sister, Satoshi came up with the same mad, desperate plan he has? Did Satoshi kill his abusive aunt, framing it as a sacrifice, then legging it, making himself the vanishing? Well, it'd certainly give all of this a great deal of poetic justice. However, Mion reminds him that no, this is not possible. It's a cool idea, and one that she actually thought of herself before. But they caught the guy, a random tweaker. So, well, so much for that. Now, again, I'm actually going to give you a small spoiler here, as I think Ryukishi is being a bit cheeky here in terms of mystery writing conventions that exist. Again, we will tackle this extensively in Umineko for a reason. Despite this apparent debunking, Keiichi's suspicions are partially correct, but we will get into that big ball of sadness way later. Regardless, plans are set and the course is laid in. Now it is time to shit or get off the pot, to follow through. But can he? We've seen this before in a lot of media. Everyone thinks they can do it, but actually taking a life, even a life of someone as reprehensible as Teppei, someone that needs to die, well, once the poo hits the rotating appliance, it's actually really hard. And trust me, this is where the arc goes, from good to oh my goodness, holy crap, this manga. Let's take a look. The next day, the day of the festival, Keiichi has changed his plan slightly. Oh right, this entire bit kind of confuses me, so I'm going to slightly simplify the murder plot and how exactly Keiichi plans to execute all of this. Because A, it's kind of complicated, and B, I'm at least partially sure that I'm getting some of this slightly wrong. Please let me know in the comments if I am. In essence, as I understand it, he realizes that the swamp is too far out of his way. Getting Teppei out there is really risky. And tonight, the night of the festival, is the only night that he's pretty much guaranteed to be alone. It has to happen now, and it has to happen right. So instead, he shifts things to a copse of woods close to Satako's house, and we see that he's preemptively digging a shallow grave for the abuser. Keiichi realizes that digging a grave is actually way harder than you'd think. Is it just me, or is there some narrative resonance with frigging Pet Cemetery of all things? I know I'm reaching here, but it's such a cool sequence from the book, so alright, I will let it stand. As he digs, we get a lot more insight into Keiichi's history and character. Now, this I totally forgot. There's actually a huge clue hidden in here, but as a whole, it's not especially interesting, so we're just gonna nutshell the entire lengthy exposition sequence. It turns out that Keiichi, who's always been regarded as a lackadaisical student, is actually, he's Shikamaru, a super genius, just easily bored, and not good at standard academics. Give him some random abstract question and he won't bother. But give him a problem to solve with some sort of practical phrasing and application, and he is wildly intelligent. Once he got put into, alright, I think this is a slight mistranslation. I could be wrong, maybe someone with the raws or the original Japanese can help. It says cram school here, which, I don't know, that doesn't sound right. Cram schools are something else. So we will go with school for the gifted. But while he did initially flourish, his ennui returned and was followed by anger and resentment. This is what actually prompted them, at least in part, to move out of the country, likely implying that something happened. Oh. Regardless, it turned out that he actually flourished in Hinamizawa in a way that he never did before, making friends at last and coming out of his shell. That afternoon, he sets his plan into action. He calls Teppei, pretending to be a cop, and tells him to come over immediately. They won't say any more, but they have Satako in custody. Teppei immediately pitches a mantram, loses his fluff, and says he will head right over. Oh right, this bag of maggots drives a moped. Otherwise, this wouldn't be possible. Keiichi, knowing the route he'll take, lies in wait behind a tree at the entrance to the woods. Sure enough, there he is. The bastard comes riding along. And as he takes a corner, Keiichi rushes him, hits him with a shoulder, and knocks him over, sending him sprawling into the mud, before proceeding to straight up paranoia agent Teppei, beating him extensively around the head, the back, and the shoulders with the metal baseball bat. Teppei gets up and begins running for his life. But because this isn't a manga that does things by half measures, another reason I love this arc, when a character resolves to kill someone that needs killing, they shouldn't engage in second thoughts or, you know, the whole, oh, all life is sacred nonsense. Just do it and let the story proceed from there. Keiichi eventually does run Teppei to ground, and, not to put too fine a point on it, beats him and beats him and beats him to death, in an extended sequence that is kind of grisly, but also kind of restrained, especially compared to some of the sequences in later arcs. Bloody hell does this get gory in places. But he doesn't stop until Teppei's noggin looks like a half-eaten papaya. Then, moving with purpose, Keiichi begins to clean up. The bike and the bat go into the swamp, likely because they're much easier to transport than a full-grown adult corpse, and he then buries Teppei in the grave he dug. And as night falls and the rain begins to pound, he jumps on his bike and strikes out for home, before almost immediately being run off the road by a rather nice-looking sedan, injuring his ankle. Oh shit. Out steps, oh hey Takano, looking a little, dummy mommy there. Not that I'm complaining. This character, man. She agrees to give him a lift home because she is the one that accidentally ran him off the road, and we actually get some really fun sparring between her and Keiichi, with her realizing that something doesn't quite add up here. He's not at the festival with the other kids for one. He's riding around alone in the driving rain at night, splattered with mud and carrying a shovel, and she asks him if he managed to bury the body. For a moment, Keiichi wishes that he wore his brown pants, but as it turns out, we're doing that thing. She's actually just dicking with him. Then he notices that there is a bike in the trunk of her car, a bike that looks very familiar, and he clicks that, hang on, this is Tomitake's bike. Where is he? They spar a little more, with her playing along, saying that it couldn't possibly be his bike because Tomitake takes it everywhere with him. This is actually a bike that he picked out for her, once again implying that these two are, how shall we say, greasing a weasel together. He seems to accept this, but as she leaves, she turns and, oh dear, that's not a good face either. Note the silver eyes and the weird smile. Remind you of anything? Takano says, in a really creepy voice, that maybe it's better for everyone if neither of them saw the other one that night, implying that, well, you can put the pieces together. They've both done a bit of murder and body disposal in the rain. But can she be trusted to keep quiet? Well, that's the puzzle. And yes, those of you who have read Murder on the Orient Express, which Ryukishi is absolutely a fan of, might actually be thinking that you've solved the whole thing. But are you right? Time will tell. Regardless, as she drives away, a furious and terrified Keiichi begins to curse her, wishing that he'd killed her off while he'd had the chance. Dude, you may have done well with your first, but I'm pretty sure you couldn't have pushed a car into that swamp. Regardless, he continues at length to curse her, hoping that she dies a terrible death. And then, suddenly, and here we go. This is where the arc goes from awesome to something else entirely. As he continues to speak curses over her, Keiichi freezes in utter terror, as a strange and horrible voice sounds inside of his head, telling him that his wish has been heard and will be granted. As he has asked, Takano will indeed die, and will die horribly, wrapped in flames while still alive. Oh. Then a terrified Keiichi realizes that he's hearing something else, something outside of his head. Footsteps, stealthy footsteps, just audible over the downpour. Footsteps following just behind him. His nerve breaking, Keiichi turns and looks, but there's nothing there but the falling rain. This arc, man! And believe you me, we are not done yet, but that will have to wait until next time. Don't worry, it won't be... Okay, so let's quickly get this locked in. The next few videos are earmarked as a new Albard patron request starting, and a contest winner one-shot from ages ago. Then Gantz, then we will do part 3 before the AMA. Okay? Okay. Anyways, before we finish for the day, I want to express my appreciation for and gratitude to, as always, our amazing patrons. I am not even slightly exaggerating when I say that. Without them, this video would not be a thing at all. So before you thank anyone for this, thank them. This little patron drive has been decent, and I genuinely appreciate it all so much. So, from all of the owls, a massive thanks to Miss Flatwoods, Cheshire Quill, Cookie Dough, Cam Cam Trigger, Cole Boquet, Melissa Marston, BK, Amber, Taylor Smith, Ang, Alice Teacup, Mally Pepper, Sam Glasper, Brendan, Majestic, The Spilled Milk, Kamarian Lindsay, Taylor Smith, Tac2M, Sefit, Anna MC, Mew Haku, John Nepp, Huna Hexchen, Adclear Andrew, Nate Corbin, Fluffy Burb, Kamolian, Endymion, Jake, B. Empress, Simone, Squid, Emily, The Hedgehog Gamer, Rafty, Maverick Moona, #Hermit, Yorgborg, William, Oishipan, Erin Arnold, Sallyface, JMD Reed, Raid, Kozen Doji 180, Mootle, RJ Grendelsire, Hamwise the Stout, Jaylanar, Mike, Chilled Ice, as opposed to Warm Ice, Range Danger, Rose Montgomery, Inuki Koji, John Knepp, Kel Kaur, Opinion Custard, Robert Dote, Cho Jin, Wargle, Hunting for R2D2, Jaylanar, Lee, Eleanor, Crazy, Question Man 6, Ring Muscle, although I think they go by Mina now, Callie Caris, JL, Lance Goebel, Piece of Yeast, Cheddar, Lightspeed. Oh right, and I also want to give an even specialer thanks to Jathis and Fogweaver, our 2 resident Albard patrons. That is so generous, you guys. Much appreciated. A reminder, Albards get to commission a deep dive series, which is how we got Biomega, Should Be a Goldfish, and something will be starting soon. Otherwise, if you do want to support us, head on over to our Patreon. Aside from the Patron Drive milestones, there are some fun rewards, including exclusive emotes and things on the Discord, an exclusive video, my audiobook, which I do hope to update soon. I'm just waiting on something cool from Mrs. Owl, an exclusive channel, and some other cool stuff. And there are also some other unique rewards for higher tiers, and if you have anything you would like to see as a reward, you could always let me know. If you want to support us in other ways, Mrs. Owl's editing and art commission services are still available. And as always, all links are in the description. Aside from that, we also have a Discord. And the little community we have over there is just, it's so wholesome. Go and check it out. But yeah, thanks again. This little patron drive has been a lot of fun thus far. And who knows, we may even make it an annual thing. Until next time, my friends, this is the Owl, signing off.